Hello, my amazing Heartland family. It's so good to have you back here with me. Whether you've been with us since the beginning or just joined the journey, your love for this show makes every moment special. So, grab your favorite blanket, maybe some tissues, and let's dive into the emotional world of Heartland Season 19 together. In the heart of Heartland Ranch, as the sun rises over the Golden Plains, a sense of quiet peace falls over the land. The morning is calm, yet underneath the serene beauty of the landscape, a storm brews. Amy Fleming stands near the barn, her eyes following her daughter, Lindy, as she runs joyfully among the horses. It's a peaceful moment, one that in many ways feels like it could last forever. But as any Heartland fan knows, peace is often fleeting for Amy. The quiet of this morning is more than just a backdrop. It's a reflection of the storm that has been brewing inside her ever since Ty left. Years have passed, yet the absence of Ty Borden remains a raw wound. His memory lingers in every corner of the ranch, from the rustling trees to the sound of hooves against the earth. But perhaps the most haunting reminder of him is Lindy. As Amy watches her daughter, she can see so much of Ty in her, the same fearless spirit, the same determination, and even the same depth in her eyes. Amy has tried to move on, to fill the emptiness with love for Nathan, but the weight of the past never truly leaves. Her heart still holds on to the past, to the man she thought she had lost forever. And just when Amy is lost in the complexity of her emotions, everything changes. A truck rolls down the driveway, kicking up dust as it comes to a halt. Jack steps out of the barn, squinting at the approaching vehicle. Amy's heart begins to race. She knows, she feels it deep within her bones, something significant is about to happen. The door of the truck opens, and for a moment, time stands still. Amy's breath catches in her throat. She wants to run, to close her eyes and wake up from what feels like a dream. But it's real. Ty is standing right there, alive. Every inch of Amy's world tilts. Her heart, once shattered by his loss, is now caught between the joy of seeing him again and the pain of everything he left behind. The tension in the air is palpable. Jack's face pales, his usual calm composure faltering. Lou gasps, unable to hide her shock. Lindy, ever the curious child, looks at the man everyone else is staring at, oblivious to the gravity of the situation. But for Amy, everything is different. The ground beneath her feet feels unsteady. For years, she has struggled to move on, and now the man she thought was gone forever is standing before her, asking to be a part of their lives again. "Ty, is it really you?" Amy whispers, barely able to believe her own words. Ty's gaze is filled with so much emotion, longing, guilt, pain, and something deeper, something broken. He takes a step forward, his voice cracking as he says, "I'm home." The words should bring relief. They should feel like a reunion, a healing. But for Amy, they are like a cruel joke. "Home?" she whispers, shaking her head. "You don't get to say that. You don't get to just walk back into our lives like nothing happened." Ty's face falls. He's been gone for so long, and yet he'd always hoped that coming back would somehow make things right. But Amy can't just forget the years of grief, the pain of raising their daughter without him, the absence that has echoed through every part of her life. "Where were you, Ty?" she demands, her voice trembling with anger and hurt. The questions flood her mind, but no answers seem sufficient. How could he just leave and then show up like nothing had changed? Ty opens his mouth to speak, but the words are caught in his throat. He doesn't have the answers. He doesn't know how to make up for everything he's missed. His jaw tightens as he struggles to find the words, but the reality is there's no easy way back from the past. The weight of his absence has shaped Amy in ways she can't ignore. The emotional intensity between them is undeniable. Overwhelmed, Amy finds herself caught in a battle between the love she still carries for Ty and the life she has built without him. Her heart is torn, and the pain of those years without him feels as fresh as it ever did. Ty is back, but his return isn't the simple, happy moment it should have been. Instead, it's a complicated and difficult choice. Can they move forward? Can they heal? Or will the wounds of the past be too much to overcome? As the camera pans out, the rest of the family watches from a distance, unsure of what will happen next. The future of Heartland and of Amy and Ty's relationship now hangs in the balance. Ty Borden's return might be the beginning of something new, but it could also be the final chapter in a story of love, loss, and forgiveness. The sun rises over Heartland Ranch, bathing the land in a warm golden glow that spreads across the fields, grazing past the barn and touching everything in its path. Amy Fleming stands near the barn, gazing across the property as her daughter, Lindy, plays joyfully with the horses. The quiet of the morning wraps around her like a soft blanket. She watches Lindy with a sense of peace in her heart. The ranch is alive, and Lindy is growing up so quickly, becoming the kind of rider Amy had always hoped for, full of fearless energy and determination. Yet beneath the surface, Amy feels the weight of something more. A sense of unease lingers in the air, an inexplicable feeling that something is about to change. She tries to ignore it, telling herself it's just the way life goes. But in truth, the absence of Ty Borden still haunts her every day. The loss feels as if it happened yesterday. His memory is everywhere in the way the horses respond to her touch, the sound of hooves against the earth, and most painfully, in the reflection of Lindy's eyes. Amy sees so much of Ty in her daughter, the same passion, the same spirit, the same depth. She smiles at the thought of Ty's memory being passed down to Lindy, but with that thought comes another one, heavier and harder to shake. Amy has built a new life. Nathan has been patient, kind, and supportive in ways she never imagined. Yet, no matter how much she wants to move forward, she can't deny that a part of her heart still aches for Ty, the memories they shared, the life they built, the love that was so abruptly taken away. As Amy stands there, lost in thought, Lo approaches with 2 cups of coffee. She hands one to Amy and leans against the fence, watching Lindy. A quiet smile tugs at her lips, touched with nostalgia. "She's growing up so fast," Lou says wistfully. "I can't believe she's already asking about riding solo. It seems like just yesterday she was so small and dependent on us." Amy chuckles softly, but her smile is bittersweet. The truth is, it hurts. It hurts to see Lindy becoming so independent. And yet, at the same time, Amy can't deny how proud she is. Still, that pang of loss lingers, especially as she thinks about Ty. "She's just like him," Amy admits, her voice soft as she watches her daughter fearless, determined. Ty's spirit is in her. Her loose smile fades, and her eyes linger on Amy, sensing the heaviness in her voice. The absence of Ty is something they all feel, but Amy carries that weight alone. Lou hesitates before asking the question that has been on her mind. Amy's breath catches in her throat. She looks down at the coffee cup in her hands, swirling it absent-mindedly. Nathan has been everything she hoped for in a partner, understanding, supportive, kind. But is that enough to heal a heart that has never fully let go? Nathan had been patient with her as she dealt with the fallout of Ty's loss. He had never once pressured her to move on or forget. But now, as she faced the reality of her feelings, something inside her struggled. Could she build a future with Nathan when her heart still carried the past? Before Amy could find the words to answer Lo, the distant rumble of a truck broke the quiet morning air, shattering the stillness. Nearby, Jack paused his work, narrowing his eyes at the approaching vehicle. Amy's heart began to race, her chest tightening with an unexplainable sense of urgency. She could feel it, that strange sensation she had tried to ignore. Something was about to happen, something big. As the truck pulled into the driveway, dust billowed in its wake. Amy's world tilted. Her breath caught in her throat. The truck stopped. The door opened, and for Amy, the world went silent. The familiar sounds of the ranch, the gentle rustling of the trees, the soft whinnies of the horses faded into the background. Her heart pounded in her chest, the noise deafening in her ears. She couldn't process it. She wanted to run, to turn away, to make this moment disappear, but she couldn't. Jack stepped forward, his usually steady expression draining of color. Lou gasped in disbelief, covering her mouth as her eyes widened in shock. Lindy, unaware of the storm unfolding around her, looked curiously at the man who now stood at the center of everything. Amy barely recognized the sound of her own voice as she whispered the name that had been lost to time, Ty. He stood before her, alive after all these years. After everything, he was standing right in front of her. Her mind raced with 1,000 questions. Where had he been? Why hadn't he come back sooner? Did he think he could just walk back into their lives as if nothing had happened? Ty's eyes were filled with a mixture of emotions, longing, guilt, and something deeper, something unspoken that Amy couldn't quite decipher. He opened his mouth to speak, but for a moment, no words came out. He stood there, a figure frozen in time, lost in the weight of everything he had missed. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "Amy, I'm home." Amy's body tensed. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Home. The word echoed in her ears. It felt like a cruel joke, a reminder of everything she had lost. How dare he say that? How dare he act as if everything could just pick up where it left off? He was gone. He had left her. He had left their daughter. And now, after all these years, he wanted to come back and pretend nothing had happened. "No," Amy said, her voice shaking. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. "You don't get to say that. You don't get to walk back into our lives like nothing happened." Ty stepped forward, desperation and regret etched into his face. His voice cracked slightly as he spoke again. "I know I don't deserve to be here. I know I can't fix what I've done, but I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. I've thought about you, about Lindy, every single day. I'm so sorry, Amy. I should have come back sooner." Amy stepped back, her hands trembling. She shook her head, disbelief coursing through her. Her emotions swirled in a storm of anger, confusion, and deep, aching sorrow. She wanted to scream at him, ask him where he had been all this time, demand answers to the questions that had tormented her for years. But instead, she just stood there. And when she finally spoke, she barely recognized her own voice, the pain in it, the rawness. It was as if every year without him had been building to this moment, and now that he was standing in front of her, it was all too much. Ty opened his mouth to answer, but no words came. His jaw tightened, and then silence. Ty wanted to explain, to make it right, but there were no words that could undo the years of hurt, the longing, the missing pieces of their lives without him. The silence between them grew unbearable. I don't have an excuse, Amy." His voice was hoarse, raw with emotion. "I was lost. I didn't know how to come back to you. I was broken, and I didn't know how to fix myself. But I want to try now. I need to try." Amy's heart ached at his words, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to erase the years of pain. It wasn't enough to undo the life she had built without him. She took another step back, shaking her head. Her voice came out in a whisper, laced with hurt. "You don't get to come back and fix this, Ty. You don't get to just walk back into my life and pretend you can make everything okay." It wasn't that simple. The air between them was thick with tension. Amy felt like she was suffocating, caught between the love she still felt for Ty and the reality of all the years he had been gone. The past was a wound that refused to heal, and his return was tearing it open in ways she wasn't sure she could handle. The family watched in stunned silence. Jack looked as though he had seen a ghost, his face pale and unreadable. Lou stood nearby, still in disbelief, her hand covering her mouth. Lindy, oblivious to the weight of the moment, simply watched the man in front of her, curiosity flickering in her innocent eyes. Jack finally broke the silence. "Ty, "You're back." His voice was rough, shaken. He stepped forward, his gaze never leaving Ty. "I never thought I'd see this day." Ty looked at Jack, regret and longing written all over his face. He had no idea how to repair the relationship strained by his absence. Years of silence had created a chasm between them, one he wasn't sure could ever be bridged. Amy exhaled sharply. "You can't just come back and expect everything to be the same." Her voice was firm, but beneath it, there was something softer. She wasn't just angry, she was broken. She had spent so long surviving without him, learning how to stand on her own, how to raise their daughter alone. His return didn't erase the years he had missed, the moments he had abandoned. Lindy tugged at her mother's hand, her small voice cutting through the thick silence. "Mommy, who is he?" Amy's breath caught. She looked down at Lindy, her heart aching. How do you explain to a child that the man standing before her is her father? The father she had never known. The father who had been absent her entire life? She opened her mouth, but the words wouldn't come. The silence in the yard was deafening. Every movement, every glance felt heavy with unspoken pain. Ty was back, but nothing about this felt right. Amy felt like she was living in a dream, caught between the past she had lost and the present that felt impossible to piece together. Ty stood there vulnerable, broken, unsure of how to move forward. He knew he had no right to expect anything from her. He knew his absence had left wounds too deep to simply heal overnight. Yet, as he looked at Amy, he felt at that familiar pull, the longing for the life they had, the love they had shared. This wasn't just about seeking forgiveness. It was about fighting for the family he had left behind. He swallowed hard, his voice thick with emotion. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, Amy, but I'm here. I'm here." His eyes flickered to Lindy, then back to Amy. "I'm here because I want to make things right. Not just for me, but for you. For her. And then silence. Because no one, not Amy, not Jack, not Lou, knew what to say to that. Ty knelt down to Lindy's level, his voice soft but steady. "Lindy, if you'll let me, I want to be a part of your life. Both of your lives." His eyes flickered up to Amy for a moment before returning to his daughter. "I'll prove it to you, one day at a time." Amy's heart was a battlefield. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to hold on to the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, they could rebuild what was lost. But the pain, the years of being alone, of raising Lindy without him, those wounds weren't so easily forgotten. Her gaze softened, but her resolve remained firm. "You're right," she said quietly. "You don't deserve forgiveness. Not yet." She took a shaky breath. "But maybe one day you'll show us you mean it. Maybe then we can start to rebuild." Ty nodded, understanding the weight of her words. This wasn't going to be easy. There were no shortcuts to fixing what he had broken. But it was a start he was willing to fight for. The family stood together, the tension between them still thick, but in the space between their pain, something else stirred a possibility. The road ahead would be long and full of challenges, but the fact that Ty was here, standing in front of them, gave them something to hold on to. For Ty, it was a chance to right the wrongs that had weighed on him for so long. Because Heartland wasn't just about horses and ranch life. It was about family, about healing, about finding the courage to move forward even when the pieces seemed too broken to fix. Ty's return wouldn't fix everything overnight, but maybe, just maybe, it was a step towards something better. As the sun dipped behind the hills, casting golden light across the ranch, Amy, Ty, and the family stood together. Each carried their own burdens. But for the first time in a long while, there was something else too. Hope. The next few days passed in a blur for Amy. Every morning, she woke up to the same strange, surreal reality. Ty was home. And yet, the ranch felt different, quieter, heavier, like the land itself carried the weight of unspoken words. Unsure of how to react to his return, Ty did his best to make himself useful, mucking out stalls, fixing fences, tending to the horses, as if time had never stolen years from him. His hands moved with the same skill and care that had always defined him. But work alone couldn't bridge the distance between him and the family he had left behind. Amy watched from a distance, her heart torn between the love she had once felt and the betrayal that still lingered. When they spoke, their conversations were surface level. They talked about Lindy's progress with the horses, the weather, how things had been since he left. But underneath it all, there were unspoken words Amy didn't know how to say. Questions she wasn't sure she wanted answers to. She told herself it didn't matter. The damage had already been done.